Good morning. You're watching Business World Live. I'm DANIE LAUREL. It's the start of a new trading day. Let's kick off with our top story. The Bangko Sentral has pledged to continue supporting the country's economic recovery as inflation is expected to slow down in the last months of 2021. BSP Governor Ben DIOKNO said in a virtual forum that the BSP will remain vigilant over inflation dynamics to ensure that the monetary policy stance continues to support economic recovery to the extent that the inflation outlook will allow. DIOKNO believes that supply issues will be resolved in the next few months and notes that recent price spikes are just transitory. He says higher transport fares and wage hikes are unlikely given the current unemployment figures. The country's jobless rate stood at a 4-month high of 8.1% in August, while inflation slightly eased to 4.8% in September. DIOKNO said the BSP is already talking about the appropriate timing of unwinding the policy. Meanwhile, in an interview with Bloomberg, DIOKNO said he is confident that the country will hit its GDP targets of 4 to 5% this 2021. He says the key to recovery is vaccination, and the government has accelerated its vaccine rollout nationwide. Now, Metro Manila will be placed under Alert Level 3 starting this Saturday, October 16th. Under Alert Level 3, more establishments are allowed to reopen, including cinemas, amusement parks, bowling alleys, and swimming pools. Also, vaccination status will no longer be determined in dine-in restaurants, personal care establishments, gyms, and worship areas. Alert Level 3 will be in place until the end of the month. But several experts are still looking forward to the further easing of restrictions in NCR down to Alert Level 2. For one, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion, has been pushing for Alert Level 2. He explains that many businesses are already having a hard time staying afloat. Most businesses agree with this, along with NTF COVID-19 Special Advisor Ted Herbosa, who said Metro Manila may be eased further to Alert Level 2 after 2 weeks. But several frontliner groups like the Private Hospital Association of the Philippines have opposed the proposed further easing, saying hospitals are currently still overwhelmed. No surprise that markets are set to rally this morning on the back of that impending freedom from Saturday. You can see on my terminal here up by 80.20. That is up by 1.13% to 71.49.12. Of course, this, as we've seen, you can see on the right part of my graph here on the terminal, we have been at a quite clear upward trend since at least the middle of August, and especially since we've been easing since that ECQ that was happening on August. Let's take a quick peek at our big performers here. We are watching very closely the ones that will be opening, and true enough, Bloomberry leading the pack here. Casinos set to open at least at 30% for the time being. That's up by 5.3%. Jollibee as well, important food company that does rely as well on dine-in, up by 3.7%. And of course, our property players here that own several malls: Mega World, Ayala Land, Robinsons as well, and even Wilcon and SMIC, which of course own these malls, also jumping this morning. There are only two sitting out this rally. Strangely, you've got AC Energy, but that has also gone down from the back of an 8 straight days of an uptrend. PLDT as well, one of the best performers here. I did want to take a quick peek at the other restaurants we're watching, apart from, of course, Jollibee, which is up by 3.7% this morning. You also have Shakey's up by 0.2%, and also Max's enjoying a bit of a bump up. But there's also one specific sector, travel, that will be clearly in focus. Cebu Pacific jumping by 3.3% here. Macro Asia as well up by 2.2%. This, of course, as fully vaccinated international travelers from the green areas or low risk will no longer be required to undergo facility-based quarantine. That is, of course, if you provide a negative RT-PCR basically within 72 hours from travel. So it's very, very interesting here on whether or not, the airlines will be benefiting from that reopening. It's not just us. We've also got other countries in Southeast Asia also opening their borders to even, people like us, Filipinos, to be able to travel there. You've got also Bali welcoming more countries. You've got also Australia also starting to inoculate even children, Malaysia as well starting to reopen, and India getting close to 1 billion first doses. So very exciting times here. And of course, I just wanted to take a quick peek at the property sector here, which is of course going to be very much in focus. You can see the property index up by 1.3% here. It's not just the malls that will be benefiting from the reopening. You've also got, of course, the offices and whether people will start to go back to work. And of course, you've got the hotels and casinos that we are watching out for as well. With oil hitting above 80 a barrel and inflation staying above target, what will an oil price hike mean for consumers already struggling to make ends meet? Here to discuss with us, we have Rodela Romero. She's the Assistant Director of the Oil Industry Management Bureau at the Department of Energy. Good morning, ma'am, and welcome to Business World Live.
Good morning, Danny, and to your followers. Magandang umaga po sa lahat. Yeah.
Ma'am, I just want to show on the terminal here how the prices of oil. This, of course, is Brent that we are watching out for. But we had discussed, before the broadcast that you are looking at the Platts index in Dubai. But nevertheless, close enough to this 83.39 US dollars per barrel. How is this going to impact our direct, consumption habits here in the Philippines?
Okay, thank you very much, Danny. As I mentioned earlier, that the benchmark of pricing for the Asia is the Dubai crude. So we do monitor the development and the oil prices in the international market. And based on the recent development, that basically the reason for the adjustment, itong nangyari last Tuesday, is because of the fundamentals of supply and demand. When you say that, for instance, once the demand is high, like in this case na nag-rebounds ang mga economic activities na because of the massive vaccination implemented by the different countries, and then there's a tight supply. In this case, the reason for that tight supply is the unresolved nuclear deal, di ba? And the political conflict in Venezuela and the recent Hurricane Ida in the Gulf of Mexico. All of this contributed to the increase in the oil prices. So we have also monitored the outlook of Platts. And based on their September 28 report, there's a possibility that the supply and demand will balance at the month of April 2022. But at the moment, Ma'am Dani,
Wow.
if I may, there's a deficit of 2.91 million barrels per day
Okay.
until end of this year.
All right. Ma'am, DOE Secretary Kusi already mentioned that we have no control over these external factors that affect, of course, the oil price. But we do have other industry groups saying, but we do have control over the price hikes happening. There are other ways to do this. For example, by stopping the excise taxes first so that we do not have to pay or the consumers don't have to pay this. Is this a possibility?
I think, Ma'am Dani, I cannot comment as far as the excise tax is concerned, but I think there's a provision in the train law. But if a certain crude reaches a certain amount, I'm not sure if it's a 3 consecutive months or the past 3 consecutive months that it reaches $80 per barrel, there's a possibility to suspend the excise tax. But it's more on the decision of the Department of Finance. For the DOE, what we are doing right now, for the past 2 days, we've been discussing with the oil company. We're appealing for their corporate social responsibility to at least provide additional discount to our motorists, particularly to the public transport group, di po ba? So we have several meetings with them, and then they gave us an assurance that they will look into yung mga discount nila na binibigay dito sa ating mga kapatid sa transport sector.
Okay. Ma'am, you had already anticipated this supply crunch months before, diba? Even with the discussions of the OECD, even ahead of the supply disruptions. And you had already mandated oil companies to maintain a supply in anticipation of this. Will this not help at least cushion the price increase?
Ma'am Dani, the one you mentioned is the department circular that mandate the oil company to maintain a minimum inventory requirement. So in the case of refiners, they are required to have a 30-day supply, both crude and finished products. For importers, they are required to have a 15-day supply and 7 days for LPG. So even there's no price increases, the assurance of the MIR or the minimum inventory requirements is for possible supply disruption. We're on market pricing as far as oil price is concerned.
Okay, so it cannot really affect the pricing there because it's whatever is the market price. You have to pass this
Of
on. So
course.
what, ma'am, would be the worst case scenario for the gas and diesel prices? Exactly magkano po per liter? And have you've been meeting with the LTFRB? Have you reached a consensus on what is acceptable for the transport players as well?
There's no yet a consensus as to the decision as to whether there would be a fair increase. It's more on the mandate of the LTFRB, the OTR, to assess the said petition of the transport sector. But insofar as the DOE is concerned, we're keep on monitoring the international development, that whatever the development in that market would only reflect here in the domestic pump price. And then we assure the public that we're appealing, we're having a moral suasion to our oil companies to provide additional discount, promotional items, or whatsoever that can give or temper at least the price increase in the motorists. At the same time, Danny, we're continuously monitoring the quality of fuel and the quantity. Yun nga, mahal na yung petroleum products, kakatok pa yung makina o kulang pa sa sukat. So the DOE keep on monitoring and doing a calibration of the dispensing pump and checking the quality of all petroleum products sold in the market. So if there's some complaint on that aspect, they can refer it to the DOE through our hotline.
Okay, ma'am, is there a possibility to put a price cap or for the government to do this? We've done this for to curb inflation in things like pork. To be able to do that, or even with the rice tarification law, we were able to manage the prices of vegetables during the pandemic and even medical supplies. Is this a possibility po to have a cap for transport fares and for oil price hikes?
So far, as far as the oil deregulation law, which is our Bible at the moment, is a deregulated industry. Unlike before that were regulated, there's an ERB, the defunct Energy Regulatory Board that controlled the prices. So probably in fact, we're in the process of amending the oil direct law, and it's on our legislative level of the government to look into what is the appropriate strategy to address this kind. But in the meantime, that we're just following, I don't think with the other issuances or law that would govern, that would give the cap. But as far as the oil deregulation law, there's no such provision.
Okay, so for now, hindi po may expect ang cap
Uh,
of the fare hikes. Last question, ma'am, before we let you go. This is, of course, expected to impact inflation, which is already above the target range. BSP Gov DIOKNO has mentioned that he's expecting it to go below 4% by the end of the year. But now, with oil prices threatening that, are you expecting that this will lead to not just first round effects, but even second round effects of inflation if it feeds into the local economy po?
the strategies to look into the whole economy, the impact to the different sector would lies on NEDA and the DOE. But as far as the energy sector is concerned, we're really very cooperative in whatever the decision that would benefits our consuming public or the public in general.
Okay, so something to still watch out for here, how of course these fare hikes will be affecting. And but as you mentioned, ma'am, in discussions with the oil companies to pull in their weight and to provide, of course, some relief for the consumers and the transport sector.
Yes, yes,
Thank you
Danny,
so
that would be
much.
a great help on our motorists.
Okay, we will discuss that as well with the private sector. Many thanks, ma'am. That was, of course, Rodela
Thank you
Romero.
very much, Danny. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe.
Keep safe, ma'am. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Businesses will only be able to sustainably recover if the economy is fully opened and if restrictions are lifted. NEDA Secretary Carl Chua said this during the latest Senate hearing on the 2022 budget. Chua explained that the idea of recovery is allowing businesses to operate, but he pointed out that many businesses have not been given the chance to reopen due to the heightened quarantine. Chua argued that giving more ayuda while the economy remains restrictive is not the answer because it will only lead to a cycle of businesses not operating and tax revenues falling. Once we are able to reopen the economy, the secretary added that we would have the quote virtuous cycle where businesses that need grants would be supported by the financial sector. Gross international reserves slipped by about 0.7% as of the end of September as the government paid its foreign debt obligations. The dip from $107.9 billion in end August to $107.1 billion in end of September was also due to a lower valuation of the central bank's gold reserves. At its end September level, our foreign exchange buffers could cover 10.8 months worth of imports of goods and payments of services and primary income. Gross international reserve safeguards an economy from market volatility and is an assurance of the country's capability to pay debt in case of an economic downturn. And that's a first look into the business day. Today is Thursday, October 14, 2021. Catch Business World Live for the market close at 3:15 p.m. today. I'm DANIE LAUREL. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.